Hi, and welcome to the RCast podcast, where we highlight Arkansas podcasters and industry experts.
With each episode, we release the full interview and also a shorter 20 to 30-minute show if you just want the highlights. Subscribe to the RCast podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and in all of the major podcasting apps. We're also on YouTube at RCast Pod.
On this episode, we're interviewing Lacey Olson and Ashley Pate. They're the voices behind the true crime podcast United States of Murder, which is produced in Little Rock.
All right, let's, I guess, do it like we usually do.
I'm Lacey.
No. I'm Lacey.
I'm Ashley.
And we're United States of Murder, the podcast.
Can you tell us about how you two found each other?
Oh, boy.
I found Lacey on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. She
Sent her a message, slid into her DMs, and was like, hey, I know I'm a stranger, but I would like to talk to you about murder at a bar. Do you want to come meet me? And she was like, yeah, sure.
Like, of course.
And we talked for like an hour and left there with, with our
episodes
plan. Yeah.
Planned. Mm-hmm.
So
how did you know that she was going to want to talk about murder?
Well, she followed someone that I followed on Instagram, and then I started following her Etsy shop, and I saw that she was making stickers for these other podcasts that I listen to. So I knew she was into the whole murder thing. Yeah. So that's it. Then I was like, hey, I know this is not typical questions in your DMs probably, but...
And I was excited.
That's how we met. There's no big...
Yeah, that was 2020.
Yeah, right after we got out of lockdown.
Yeah,
a lot of people were listening to podcasts during that time.
Well, that's how I started listening to podcasts. My sister was like, I know you like all the Dateline and all the things, so there's these podcasts you might be interested in. I'm like, okay, I'll listen. And then I'm like, where has this been my whole life? And also, I can do this. And Lacey's going to help me.
So you started listening and producing your own show in the same year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had no idea.
We were clueless.
No clue.
So for people who don't know, can you talk about the concept behind your show?
So basically, we each cover a case in a different state of the U.S. So each episode is a different state. Let's say Arkansas was our first episode. I covered an Arkansas case, she covered an Arkansas case, and then each episode is a different state. So we've done 2 seasons now completely. We've done every state twice. We've done D.C. once.
Has it just been 2 seasons?
Yes, but there's a lot of states. There's a lot.
We didn't do D.C. this time.
I know, but it was just too much. Sorry, D.C.
Sorry,
So
D.C.
every season you're doing all 50 states?
Yes.
One. Okay. So you got 101 episodes? Somewhere.
Well, we have more than that because we also started doing Wacky Wednesdays.
Pull your phone out. Let's see how many episodes we have. We have a lot.
I think it's 133.
Because we also would do like specials and interviews
we
with
do
other
have some
people.
Interviews, yeah.
So.
I think that's how I found you, because when I was, before I started building this database of like how many Arkansas podcasters are there, like you were just asking, how many are there in the state? There's tons, turns out.
Crazy.
But there's never been like a database or anywhere that you could find who's all reproducing in the state.
Okay.
And so I had to find it by just going into each podcast platform and being like, produced in Arkansas.
Really?
And like I would get a whole bunch of them pulled up, but like sometimes, that's why I didn't know if you guys were actually here or not, because you cover each state. Right?
Yeah.
So like Arkansas's episode would pull up. But I was like, okay, so are they producing here though? Or are they just covering a crime that happened here in the state? Because you might as well be in Oregon.
Exactly. Yeah. True.
Lacey's our producer and our editor.
It's pretty exciting that you're right here in the state, though. Yes, we're going to Arkansas.
Yeah.
Always been here, long-time residents.
I grew up in Memphis and moved here in like high school. So.
Okay.
And then I've been here back and forth. That'll always be my home, though. I love Arkansas, but.
Okay. Memphis, you found that as a state, or?
No, that's Tennessee.
Okay.
Yes, that's a state. Mark it down.
Arkansas,
That's the state, the state of Memphis.
That's the next one you cover.
That's we're coming back, season 3 with the state of Memphis.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. I'm born and raised in north central Arkansas around Cotter, kind of
Okay.
bebopped around, went to college in Russellville at Tech, lived in Bentonville for a while. My husband went to med school in North Carolina, so we moved there for a few years. Then he got into residency in Little Rock. We moved here, and that's where we're staying.
You better.
Yeah,
If you
we're
move, I have to
staying.
move.
We plan on staying, yeah. So, very Little Rock local podcast, even though we cover other states.
We would have absolutely invited you last year if I had known that you were
No
here.
big
in the
deal.
We had
States,
no
you know.
idea.
Yeah.
I happened to find Karen like right before the convention was going to happen last year, and I was just reached out. I was like, she's not going to want to have anything to do with this. But I was like, I reached out, and she was like, oh yeah, for sure. Like, oh, great, thank you.
That's what I found about the podcast community. I think it's made up of a lot of really nice people.
Yeah. And some of the issues that we were covering, during the workshops and everything that we did last year, and what we continually get asked even after, is how do you start a podcast? Or like people say, hey, I've got an idea for something, I just really don't know how to get it off. So I'm really impressed that there's so many people in Arkansas like you guys who are just like, I'm going for it. I don't have any experience in this. I don't have any media experience or journalism or anything, but I'm pretty passionate about the subjects, and I can put something together because I've listened to enough podcasts to know how this goes and how I can put some originality in there. So I guess, what was that journey like for you as far as like putting together your podcast? You've listened to some and you had the idea to put it together. You reached out to her apparently at a bar, dark bar.
Slid doors,
Yeah.
good windows.
Yeah. This is how most of your stories probably start out. But
Exactly. Like, don't be alarmed.
Yeah.
I am a stranger that met you online, and now I'm trying
It was
to
a public place.
get you to a bar.
Yeah.
We literally just were winging it.
Well, you had the idea of the concept.
Yes.
It was your brainchild.
But I feel like when we got together and discussed and were talking, we definitely fed off each other's ideas. And what do you think about this? Well, what if we tried that? And we still do that.
Yeah.
Like we talked about it on the ride here, just different things that we're working on now. So, what's the worst that can happen? You fail? I mean,
I know.
what? No one's going to come to your house and beat you up. Right.
Zero cost,
We're not paying anybody.
So it's your energy and time, and probably learn something from it even if you fail.
And it's fun. It's fun. You get to hang out, and we always have drinks. And
Yeah, we do.
So it does seem like it takes a lot of research when I listen to your episodes because you state all your sources. So how long does that take you?
I don't think I've ever actually kept track of how long it takes. Some are easier than others.
Yes.
Some cases have. We run into this a lot with cases from like the 50s or 60s or 70s.
There's no pictures, or there's
if
one
it's
picture.
not a big case,
Yeah.
there's not a ton out there, so you really rely on like just a couple of sources. But sometimes that's easier because if you pick a case that's more recent or more popular, quote unquote, there's a million resources, and you kind of have to go through all of them to make sure you're getting the right information because sometimes it's not all the same. That's why sometimes we'll even say, according to this person, but it's not.
There you go.
I could not
Yeah.
confirm that, so I don't know.
Right,
We're
right.
not
Don't come for
journalists.
us.
Yeah, we're like,
Don't sue
we're-
us.
Yeah, we're not
We're
journalists.
We're speculating.
We're just
Yeah.
trying to relay the information as best as we can, and we mess up sometimes, but we try
And
to
people
correct
will
it.
let us know.
Yes,
We get some funny emails.
we do.
Some
Good
are
ones
good.
though. Some really good ones.
Some are really good. And
It's
then we
fun
get-
meeting people who listen. and
Yeah.
are passionate about it.
Yeah.
We learn
And-
about a lot of new cases that way too, through people telling us
Okay.
about things in their states.
And we've had victims email us that either it's their family member that this crime happened to, or they, 6 degrees of separation, it happened in their hometown, or
They knew
the
them.
one, I forget which one it was, and I don't want to misspeak, but was the girl that got away. Remember, she
Yeah.
emailed us, and then we got a cease and desist
Yeah.
from her attorney. That's like, this case is still ongoing.
She was very kind about it. She was
very,
yeah.
very kind about
She's
it.
just kind of like, hey,
This
yeah.
is still ongoing,
Yeah.
and we still have people of interest, so talk to my client anymore.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
like, she reached out to us, lady. But it's interesting, though, because when you report on all of the stuff that you read and you record all these things, I feel like part of you disassociates with, this is a person that has a mother or a sister or a best friend. So when those people do reach out, it kind of,
for sure.
gut checks you, and you're like, okay. So we always do very much try to be respectful of everybody involved, because, like, how would you feel if that was your sister or your mom or your dad, or, you know,
Right.
so, but it's very, very lengthy in research.
Yeah.
It seems like it. Your episodes are really well researched. And you have a Patreon. How is that going?
It's going well. It's been
Lacey
fun.
does all that too. She's the woman of the hour.
We do a monthly episode, and it's typically a little more fun.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it's not always about true crime. There's a Ask Ashley segment sometimes, or just kind of
Silliness,
more rants,
yeah.
more silly, or topics that, like, for example, one time we did what was it?
Murders Behind the Music or
Murders
something.
Behind the Music, like themes, I guess, more so. Or very weird things that aren't necessarily murders, like you love a demon possession story.
I do love a demon
Anyone that
possession.
listens knows she loves a demon
And
possession
Lacey's terrified of
story.
aliens.
Oh my gosh. She believes in everything. I believe in nothing.
I believe in
It's
everything. Everything. So that's always super fun.
Yes.
So we do maybe more cryptid stuff and
Yeah, we do that sometimes.
things
for
like
sure.
that on the Patreon.
Okay.
But the Wacky Wednesday that we just started is super fun. That's been fun.
Yeah, so basically it's a shorter episode midweek that we just talk about crimes that aren't necessarily murders. Like,
They're more silly.
Yeah.
Like someone arrested for stealing a bunch of fruit, or filling an Easter egg with pornography and putting them out in people's mailboxes.
just weird things that happen.
That is pretty strange.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know what Patreon is, there's a lot of people that are getting into this, and we get asked all the time, like, how do you monetize your content, and actually get paid this, where it's like it's a job, right? So you're putting all this work and energy into it. How do they make some sort of form of money? And like what you guys do is Patreon, right? So it's a
Right.
paid service. Obviously, that money goes to you. Patreon takes a little cut, a little slice of cheese, of course. But in return, you're giving them some extra content, various subjects. So they're getting the extra content other than what they're just getting for free on the podcast catchers.
Yes.
Too.
Yes.
So yeah.
Do you know the demographics of your audience? Do you know who's listening and where they are?
Yes, mostly women. we really have all that. Yeah, I think I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's around 85% women, female listeners, and I think our most popular age demographic is 28 to 34. I think
That sounds right.
around that, and and really, I mean, we have the most listeners. Well, wait, no, Texas. We have the most listeners from Texas.
But we're in every state.
Yeah, we're in every state, but yeah.
And like the most random countries.
It has been fun seeing the
Yeah.
demographics, and you can even see with what we use the cities people are listening from.
Exactly, yeah.
It's fun to do.
Yeah.
Lacey's always like, who do you know in this state?
Especially in the beginning. I'm
Who
like,
do you know in...
How do you come up with your cases that you cover in each state?
oh, that's tough. We ask
Well,
listeners a lot
yeah.
to send us ideas because people are more passionate about certain cases when they're from that state. So we get a lot of them that way.
And there's
honestly.
ones that we've never even heard of that they'll send
Yeah.
us, and we
Yeah.
read it and we're like, this is really good.
Yeah.
How has this not been covered more? Only once have we covered the same
We did once.
case.
We didn't know until the day we were recording. That's only happened once.
One time.
But I think normally we kind of try to search for cases that aren't the most popular.
Okay.
So that's usually why we don't cover
Yeah.
the same case. But we know Ted Bundy, we have no new information.
Right.
On that.
Right.
So
Like, and that
we can't
was-
offer anything
Yeah.
on that.
That was like the original concept.
Yeah.
Was we should cover things that, like, we don't want to cover the Casey Anthonys or the Jean Benet Ramseys. Nothing against any of those cases, but like she said, we know no more than y'all know.
Sure.
So how many times do you want to hear the same thing over and over again? So let's try to find the ones that are nobody's talking about because they're not the typical blonde hair, blue-eyed white girl that got killed and she's rich and all this stuff. That happens and it's sad, but so is this person who was
Yes.
poor and lives in a trailer
Right, yeah.
and wears dirty flip-flops. Like, her story's just as important. So that's really what we try to focus on is the lesser known or the ones that just kind of get skipped over or things like that.
Are they case closed? Or are they, cold cases
All
as well?
over the place.
All over.
We've done some survivor stories even. Cold case, unsolved. Yeah, really everything.
We try to not do children. That was my thing at the beginning is I don't want to cut. Every now and then.
It's harder than it seems because
Yes.
a lot of cases, even if it's mainly involving adults, there's a
child,
background or it's kind of hard.
So sometimes that
Yeah.
does happen, but you won't ever hear us just focusing on this child, something horrible. Because I'm a mother, and that guts me. Like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to read about it. I know what happens.
Right.
I'm not talking about it. You're not talking about it. So we just try to, no disrespect, but I think it's quite the opposite. We want to be respectful of the parents and their family members. Like, you don't need to hear about, you don't want to hear about that. So we cover everything typically besides that stuff. We don't try not to do that. Lacey's like, yeah, I know.
I mean, we do. We just, I guess, if I'm covering a case like that, I'm just like, it's terrible. Everything's happened. I'm not going to tell you about it. If you want to learn more, you can look it up yourself, but I'm not. It was bad enough reading it, so that's that. And then we kind of move on with the case.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So what keeps you motivated? Because I'm hearing a lot of motivation to tell these stories.
We have a good time doing it. I think it's important to make people aware of, because that's another thing we always try to do is give tips on.
Yeah, we like doing that as well. Tips on
like safety.
Safety tips. We did some
Things not
videos
to
before
do.
that was interesting.
Yeah.
I tried to get out of handcuffs
Zip ties.
and I couldn't, and zip ties and I couldn't. So allegedly you can. I can't.
But I do feel like the more that you listen to these stories and cases and things, or watch these shows on TV, that you become aware of your surroundings, and something gets triggered in you if you're out maybe and you're like, oh my God, I remember I heard this story where this girl was walking and then I don't want to put myself in that. You know what I mean? Like, we just want people to be safe.
Especially the survivor stories.
Yes.
I remember you telling me about one girl who she had a blindfold on and she was clenching her face or something, like she was making it as big as possible.
When
or
he was tying
blowing
it.
her cheeks
Yeah.
out. And so when they were tying it and they didn't know, she was able to slip it off because she had been making her face. That's so something, I mean.
Or the ones the survivor story that we talked about where she continually licked the inside of the tape until it got the sticky off. And so she was able to, get. So, I mean, it's interesting. So follow us for more survivor tips. No, don't really. Don't put your life in our hands.
Still practice at home.
Yeah, just get some tape tonight.
That's what I did with the zip ties, and I just had marks on my arms. It wasn't good.
We talk a big game.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for Arkansans who are out there wanting to start a podcast? What's your hosting company? What kind of software do you use?
I edit on Audacity, which is totally free, but I would look up tutorials on YouTube on how to edit out noises or smacking or, just that general thing. Airplanes, which I can't always get because they're flying low over my house, but I try. Honestly, YouTube tutorials is how I learned how to do most of my stuff.
And she does it all.
Trial and error.
I show up and talk and we record and Lacey edits and she does
It's
all
not
the
perfect,
stuff.
no, but yeah.
No, you do great. What do you mean it's not perfect?
Well, I'm just saying. You can
pretty-
hear a meowing cat every now and then. Hear some barking.
Thanks for listening to the RCast podcast. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all of the major podcasting apps. Or find us on YouTube at RCast Pod.